Okay, it's playing. Perfect. And it's in the background.
Sweet.
You got the good music in the background. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode number 2 of our patron-specific Q&A, where we answer questions that our Patreon members, they send us, and we answer them. And they're about esports medicine, esports health, esports wellness, and performance. Anything that they're curious about that will supplement their gaming lifestyle. And the first question that we got was, I'm just going to stop the music now. The first question was this. I saw Rob Gronkowski recently get involved with a CBD company that does topical creams for pain relief, muscle recovery. What do you think of that, and could it work for gamers and the pains they experience? So I wanted to touch on this first, and just go ahead and say that I'm not as familiar with the CBD research out there at the moment. I'm only familiar with a very few amount of studies that show some positive effect on post-workout activity soreness, as well as inflammation through the endocannabinoid system. And that supposedly allows faster muscle recovery. So that's why I know that there's a lot of talk about the use of CBD, especially topical CBD, in the athletic space. But with a lot of these products, I want to say that my perspective on these is that they're primarily supplemental. They're always useful to add into your toolbox of recovery or toolbox of pain management. And it's the same with things like ice, kinesio tape, heating, compression. They're all things that we can use to supplement a better approach or better behaviors for wellness. And what I want to say is that, what gamers experience in terms of pain is typically associated with things like excessive load, as a result of under preparation. So not having the right amount of conditioning to handle the extended periods of time that you guys are gaming. So I know that I say this all the time, but I think it's obviously a very important concept that we have to understand. So my overall approach and thought is to always address this underlying cause, and help the gamers or help our community understand that specific conditioning, as well as lifestyle management, is a better overall approach to making sure that we have better muscle recovery, better pain management. Not to say that CBD oil or topical analgesics are not helpful, but they can absolutely be a great supplement, but maybe thinking about a holistic approach first over you only using CBD.
Yeah. So when it comes to this question of is CBD oil useful for insert in my specific issue here, I'm just gonna preface my answer by saying when we do these kind of shows, like these Patreon question and answer things, we write up our answers a little bit ahead of time, just give ourselves talking points. And the first talking point that I wrote for myself was angry pterodactyl noises, because I feel some kind of way about not marijuana, no problem with that, but with kind of the way that research is approached when it comes to something like this, or when it comes to a lot of other things that have suddenly entered mainstream as this could be the miracle thing. It was, at one point it was acai berries, and before that it was grapefruit, and there's always some new thing that is seized on as the cure-all. And I'm not claiming to be an expert on this particular area of research, and I certainly don't discount the utility of marijuana and marijuana derivatives like CBD in symptom management for some condition. I worked in a hospital for a while. I know that it's really, really useful, in particular for my cancer and my chronic pain patients, so that they, have pain that's low enough and nausea that's low enough that they can actually eat and do things. That's important. But it really frustrates me when something that might be useful in some specific cases, like marijuana, is seized on as this cure-all, because then it really limits our ability to parse out what's useful data and what's just noise. So I'm going to reserve judgment on whether or not topical application of CBD oils are going to be useful for pain relief or improving muscle recovery. Some data suggests that they might help a little bit in certain scenarios. They might not. I do know that since they're topical, the best they can do, even if they do work, is they can alleviate a symptom temporarily. They don't address an underlying cause like muscle weakness, like lack of endurance, like discoordination, like poor mobility. So if they're useful, it's only going to be as a temporary symptom reduction tool, and they can't be anything more than a small part of an overall approach to managing pain by addressing the underlying causes, like Matt said.
I think what we really want, Caitlin, here is to hear your impression of an angry pterodactyl. I think that is very
No.
vital.
Please?
No.
What about pretty please? There we go. Matt coming in clutch.
All right,
Let's
Matt
go.
came in for the pterodactyl. Thank you.
All right, number next. All right, so yeah, I agree with Caitlin big time here that anything that's going to be kind of topically applied or anything that has to do with pain relief is going to definitely maybe allow you to participate more in doing some of the activities that you should be doing to address the problems that are causing your pain in the first place. So from that perspective, I really think that maybe something like this could be useful, but if it's just a Band-Aid, if it turns out that it is just a Band-Aid, then that's really not something that you want to be relying on. You want to address the underlying causes. So I think Caitlin really hit the nail on the head there.
I do also want to asterisk too that what we're talking about here when we refer to pain, even when we talk about pain that's long lasting, we're not talking about chronic full body pain, which is an entirely different thing. We're talking about specific musculoskeletal pain that may be lasting for a long time and therefore chronic, but we're not talking about chronic pain conditions kind of as a systemic issue, because that's a whole different area of pain science and we don't want to discount the research there. Carry on.
Right.
Anyhow, thanks. But I have personally tried CBD oil, but only from rumors that it does help with sleep aid and relaxation and stuff like that. And I found that mostly it did nothing at all. And that's just for me. So that's not particularly a scientific piece of advice. There's not a big sample size to go from here, but I really found it to be more placebo than anything as far as in my case. But anyhow, speaking of sleep, I think Caitlin had another question about melatonin.
I did. That was an excellent segue. Very impressed.
You like that?
That was
Threw it over real well.
You're training him well.
So I received a question about somebody who had a hard time falling and staying asleep, and they were asking if they should take melatonin. And I have to preface my answer again, which I'm not with angry pterodactyl noises. But when it comes to the question of should someone take insert medication here, I legally can't advise people on that. None of us can. It's not within the Physical Therapy Practice Act. We can't tell you what you can and cannot take or should and should not take as a medication, legally speaking.
That doesn't stop us most of the time.
Yeah, but when we're publicly broadcast in places that it's recorded and licensing bodies could totally see it, we definitely don't do that. So let me go a little bit about what melatonin is, why you might take it, and then you can figure out if it's useful for you or not. So melatonin is something that's actually produced naturally by your body when it's exposed to less light. So in theory, it should tie into your circadian rhythm, right? As the sun goes down, things get darker, time to go to sleep, as long as you don't work like third shift. It then decreases with light exposure, like at sunrise. And in the words of the great chef Ina Garten, if you can't make your own, store-bought is fine, and that goes for brain chemicals too. But I wouldn't jump to melatonin as a first choice without first trying things like decreasing light stimulation from sources like computer or phone screens for about an hour before bedtime, or hanging blackout curtains, or setting a consistent routine for bedtime, things we refer to as sleep hygiene. As long as there's no medical reason that you or your doctor think it's unsafe for you to take melatonin, you could. But much like using CBD oil as a topical application, it's not a cure-all, and you might be better served by, if you incorporating it as part of larger overall better sleep habits and creating those good sleep hygiene routines for yourself. And our last question, I believe, has absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with sleep, so I don't have a smooth transition here.
Oh, come on, Caitlin.
I mean, I guess I'll just pop this question on over to you.
Nice.
There we go.
Nice.
That's what I'm talking about. So, next question is, does popping your knuckles cause arthritis, and is it safe for gamers? So this is like kind of like an age-old question that people have never seems to be resolved for some reason, even though there's plenty of information out there about it. So in order to get to the bottom of this, first we need to talk about exactly what is happening when you pop your knuckles. So most people think that the sound that's created there is a gas bubble bursting. That's actually the exact opposite of what's happening. When the two surfaces of your joint get compressed together, it actually forms a gas bubble because of the pressure. And that gas bubble being there causes pressure on the lining of your joint from the inside. So all of those structures that keep your joints nice and tight together kind of spreads those out a little bit and expands them. So that pressure, it causes a couple of different things to happen. First, it feels great. It's literally amazing. And that's why you kind of get addicted to it. But it also releases those chemicals in your brain, like dopamine and things like that, that actually kind of get you addicted to the habit of doing it. And it can relieve pain as well. So that's kind of the why as to why people do it. But what else it can do is it causes muscle relaxation in the area. So that's kind of the theory behind manipulations in the spine, why cracking your back kind of can help relax muscle pain back there, things like that. This kind of reflexive relaxation that takes place in the area can also be really useful for us. And in certain joints, we like to do manipulations to encourage that if we're trying to deal with muscles that are too tight or trying to adjust the balance of the area of muscle tightness to weakness and stuff like that. But doing creating this gas bubble inside the joint actually causes some stretching out of the structures that keep those joints nice and tight together, like I said earlier. And if you do that too much, and over time, you can actually end up stretching out the capsule that is keeping those joint surfaces approximated closely. So you do want to be careful with overdoing it. Doing it once in a while is nothing really to worry about. But there's other ways that you can kind of get that sensation. So a lot of the relief that you feel from popping your knuckles comes from relaxing of the muscles in the area. So there's different stretches you can do of the muscles in your hands and stuff that can kind of simulate that same type of a feeling, give you that relief without actually causing any ligament laxity. So a good one you can do here is like this. My hand is in front of the camera like this. So there's a muscle that does this motion right here. So in order to do the opposite of that, you kind of just do this. And if you do that gently enough, you'll feel a stretch down through here. You can stretch back like this. And in any other direction, that muscles that cross that joint, those joints go. So the whole arthritis thing, technically, if you have a joint that moves too much and is completely unstable, you can develop an arthritis. Same thing with a joint that doesn't move enough can develop arthritis. So I wouldn't say it's directly related to popping your knuckles. I think that myth can be appropriately busted here.
Yeah.
So if your knuckles pop, it's all right. Try to find alternatives just so you don't end up with laxities.
Yeah. Overall, though, I would say that the frequency at which most of us pop our knuckles, you don't even have to worry about creating laxity. There's a very, very, very low chance that it will eventually lead to that, especially if you're cracking it, up to 10 to 15 times or 30 times a day. It's not going to lead to any significant amount of laxity because, our bodies are quite resilient. Only if you are really holding or trying to crack it at every moment of the day that it will eventually become an issue for you. But
if you've developed a nervous habit of cracking your knuckles, then we might need to talk.
Yes. But even so, there has been studies that have looked into this type of habit that really haven't showed any true negative effect in the long run because there's a lot of this external support that Elliot mentioned, right, with muscles and our tendons that support these joints. So if we have a reasonable amount of conditioning on our wrists and hands and we are cracking our knuckles or causing some cavitations in our mid back by twisting in our chair or cracking our neck as we are sitting there, I wouldn't worry too much. I know that's obviously been a big concern for a lot of gamers out there. I've gotten this question too, especially for the neck. They think that it can be bad and they think that they might end up hurting themselves or causing themselves to not move at their lower half if they
you're going to be paralyzed forever.
Just another random note with the type of popping or the gas formation. As a random thing, I did try, I think like a couple years ago, to see what would happen if I did some mid back or thoracic extension cavitations, meaning causing some knuckle cracking in your mid back before some players that I worked with would play. And it was because it was based off a study that I saw said that with thoracic extension cavitations there would be an increase in testosterone, and I think it was definitely a placebo because even though a lot of the players reported that they felt more confident, there's no way for me to really measure the testosterone anyways, but just based off subjective report, I felt that it was really based off placebo. But just an interesting thing that I wanted to test based on that study that I read a while ago. And maybe I'll dig it up and try to include it in the show notes. And we'll try to include as much research as we can in the show notes or in the description in the article. But remember, you guys can always ask us questions if you're our patron. But you can also ask us questions on Twitter, on wherever you guys can find us on social media. We'll definitely answer. This is the series where we really try to get more in depth with some of the responses, especially for our patrons that are typically a little more thoughtful about wellness and performance. But we all know that the rest of the community needs help. So if you guys have questions, feel free to send it our way, and we'll do our best to answer it. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. I know this is short, but it was sweet too. Bye.
For sure.
Very good,
Thanks.